G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of SuperCoach Edge, and it's a much sought after episode, this one, because if people have been hitting us up, sliding into DMs and asking, what does your current team look like? Well, now's your chance to have a bit of a sneak peek at how my team is looking at the moment post match simulations and intra-clubs and all that sort of stuff. We've had to delve through quite a bit of footage with some games going for 8 periods, 4 quarters with different scenarios or, match situations and stuff, which North Melbourne and Collingwood did. Outside of that, I guess, is obviously the match sims didn't have any official stats. The guru at AFL Central, he was putting together all the stats virtually by hand. I helped him out for the Carlton Geelong game. And match sims are kind of, as we've said, in our review episodes for the 4 or 5 matches that we've done, it's kind of a bit hard to read into because a lot of those matches and I guess team lineups weren't the best 23 players, 22 plus the sub. So in terms of getting a read on whether or not players are performing well on the basis of another player being out, or if it's a case of them being switched into a role that they may not have going into the season proper, we've got to weigh that up. But it's going to get a little bit easier this coming week, or at least tonight as I record this, because it is the first official preseason game. But outside of all that, we have made some adjustments to my team. So let's flick across without further ado, and I'll keep jibber-jabbering as I do so, to the blank slate that I've now cleared. Obviously took a screenshot of my team before I cleared it, otherwise I would have been in a bit of trouble. But at the end as well, I might go through and compare to my previous iteration of my team, which was back, I think, on the 3rd of Feb, potentially. So, what's that, 4 weeks, almost, in terms of time that's passed. And there's a fair few changes, let's just say that. And there's a fair few spots that are still up for grabs, obviously, until I see these preseason games proper. So let's kick things off. I won't be going into too much detail because obviously I did that in my first initial video. The only thing I probably will break down and discuss is in terms of my, if I change strategies or anything across line by line. I went through in the previous team reveal video, just detailing obviously why I've chosen certain players. So I probably won't be doing that in that greater detail, and obviously we covered all that, Liam and I, in terms of the line-by-line analysis episodes that we did. And outside of that, the only thing that's really changed is my strategy with certain players who I'm looking to upgrade to, who I'm opting to start based upon who I think are must-haves, and players that I think might be almost unattainable in getting, because if they start the season well, chances are they're not going to drop in price enough for you to jump on them, and you literally relying on luck more often than not. So without further ado, let's get into it. And there's been the most recent change here with this guy who I'm selecting first up in Nicky Dacos. He was in my team. I've shifted him in. He's been in my team for quite a while. I can't recall if he was in my team. I'll have to compare when I did my first team reveal video, but he has been in my midfield for quite a while, and I've only literally just shifted him back into defense today off the back of trying to rejig and allow a spot in the midfield to fit in a certain player who might surprise you, considering Liam and I have spoken down about this bloke for quite a while, and for good reason. For good reason. I'll just leave it at that. You could probably work out who it is, just because of the gags and jokes that Liam and I always have about him. And speaking of which as well, check out across our socials, because we put together a nice little meme of me and this certain player and the way that he's sort of weaseled his way into my team. But Dacos, I won't go into great detail. We all know he's an absolute superstar. But the main reason, as I said, for him going into defense is to free up a spot to allow this other player to come in, who I will reveal when I get to the midfielders. But I just think with Dacos, the only thing I will say is that, yes, initially my strategy was to not start him and try and hopefully pick him up at a reasonable price early on. But I just even think, despite the fact that he's got the early buy, despite the fact that he, will be tagged by Finn McGuinness, no doubt, when they play the Hawks, I just think outside of that game, I think he's going to go to another level again. This bloke is super scary, and I remember when I didn't have him in my team, how much it hurt me to watch him go about, his thing and rack up the pill at will and just, lace passes, lace out on the tit of his teammates. He's an incredible player to watch, and it's all the more fun to watch him if you've got him in your team. So I just think he's going to be really hard to try and get into your team, especially early on, unless you're going to the season with a bit of bank behind you, which I think is I'm not a massive fan of that, just because you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot and limiting yourself in terms of the players that you could be starting with. So yeah, I'm not a massive fan of keeping a whole heap in the bank going into season, but I'm also conversely not a massive fan of, spending every single dollar, because, it's inevitable, as we know, in the early part of the season, at the very least, we might need to do, some rookie corrections. And, there are rookies that are at the higher price point, and if you haven't got the cash to trade a bottom price rookie up to that player at the higher price point, you're going to find it extremely hard, and you're going to have to almost, rejig your team and trade out another player potentially in order to fit that must-have player or must-have cash cow in your team. The other guy who hasn't shifted out of my side, no surprise, I spoke of this man in the first team reveal video, Tom Stewart. As I've said, underpriced. His average does contain that injury-affected score of whatever it was, 18, 16, I can't recall off the top of my head, but I won't check it just to save time. But yeah, he's just incredible value. We all know what you're going to get with Stewart. I know some people were scared off by the match sim and his performance against Carlton. As I said in that match sim review episode, he was kind of put on ice majority of the time. A lot of the first 22 or best 22 players for the Cats were, and Carlton as well. But I think he just managed, the conditions were, I think it was like 38 degrees on that day. And, Geelong, I think they ended up playing 31 players rotating through their team on the day. So again, a lot of these guys, as I'll say a lot, keep an eye on them. These aren't lock and load players by any means, because obviously someone can get suspended, injured, and, or change of roles, all that sort of stuff. So we need to see the final. It's just a shame that we only have the one official preseason game compared to years gone by where we had at least a couple. So we've only really got a sample size of one plus the match sim game, which again, as I said earlier, we can't read too much into because there are guys missing, best 22 players missing from certain teams, and it does throw out the structure and roles of certain players, whether it be favourably or unfavourably. So that aside, Tom Stewart, I think he's one of the guys, having said all that, he's a lock. So he is in my team. Next up is a guy that has made his way into my team, and it was off the back of his, I guess the intra-club, but also the match sim, and it is Harry Sheezel. I think a lot of these owners here at 33% would have done the same. Just incredible. The one query that Liam and I had on Sheezel was his role. There's no doubting he's an absolute talent. We're worried about him potentially pushing into the midfield and losing that role, as the quarterback off half back and distributing and whatnot, but he was just insane. He was pushing up, to the wing, even to half forward at various stages, getting involved in passages of play. His disposal efficiency is absolutely elite. I think it was in the 90 percentile or thereabouts. And yeah, just incredible player. So nice to see him back in that role. And if that's the role he's going into 2024 with, we have to start him. I think he's going to be, I think, a top 6 to at the very least top 8 defender. And to start him, I think it just saves a whole lot of trouble in trying to work out the cash to try and get him into your team. And I think at that price point, he mightn't dip below that all year. And as we know, North Melbourne, they're going to be developing, struggling at various stages as well against certain opponents. So he will see a fair bit of ball in defence. So there's no worry there in terms of, I guess, him scrounging together a score from week to week. Next up, we have this guy who hasn't changed out of my team, probably easier again to go by sort by ownership. And it is Hayden Young. He should be in more than 34% of teams. This really surprises me again. Again, he is someone that is pushing into the midfield, has trained in the midfield all pre-season. Match sim, he was, however, pushed out to the wing at various stages, even in defence. But I think it's just a case of Longmuir for Freo, just switching things up, trying to get mileage into the legs of however many players that they can get, time into. And yeah, I think there's no doubting he's going to be in the engine room for Freo. We spoke about it in the defender episode, Liam and I, in terms of what his average was like when he was in the midfield for the the last 5 or so games compared to when he was playing in the defensive part of the ground. And yeah, I think it was like a 10-15 point average increase. So he's a must-have and someone that is staying in my team 100%. The other guy here is Zach Williams. So, a lot's been spoken about this guy in terms of his injury, recovering from his knee, of course. Aaron Hamill, one of the assistant coaches, obviously at Carlton, he came out and said post-match sim, because Williams did miss it. Just in terms of him and his timeline in coming back, he said, it comes down to, I guess, the conditioning staff, and yeah, whether or not they're confident in him playing. Now, he has been named in the only preseason hit-out, official preseason game hit-out for Carlton. So again, keep your eye on him. I'd like to see him. No doubt he's going to be managed for minutes, given that it's his first real game at senior level. But what I'm looking for here is to see his role first and foremost, and to see that he's fit and firing, that he does have the speed about him. If he's lost any of that speed that he has shown in previous years, I will think very, very strongly about not starting him. I think because there's so many different options as well that we can go down, and it does free up another spot where we can bring in another potential, cheaper, more genuine cash cow, I think. And that's part of the reason why we're starting with Williams, because not only will he make bulk cash, but, provided he's fit, of course, but also in the past he has averaged 80 odd. And if he can average 80 odd, he could at least make us 200k, I think, if not more. 200k is probably a little bit conservative. 150k, I think, no doubt he will, provided, again, that he's fit. But the big question mark is obviously his fitness. So he is one that I'm keeping an eye on, but I am not averse to switching him out of my team if need be, and then maybe using, obviously we've got round 0 to use as a bit of a guide, because, obviously scores don't count then, and Carlton does play in round 0, to see again how he plays. So he isn't a lock and load but by any means at this stage, but if he does happen to, look a bit ginger or anything at various stages, yeah, I won't be starting him in my team for round 1. And even I'd be happy enough to, not start him, and then potentially even just use a trade on bringing him in if he does start on fire. Let's round out our on-field side with this man here, Nick Caulfield. Spoke of him in the Western Bulldogs Hawthorn review video. If you haven't seen it for that match sim, go and check it out. But again, he impressed me. Took quite a few solid grabs. He was pushing up to the wing at various stages as well. But he looks fit and firing as well. So I think, again, 57%. He should be in quite a few more teams, I think. He's passed the eye test. Looks incredible. So hopefully he can stay fit. Let's move on to, and we can just go on down the list here in terms of ownership. So Josh Gipkus, he is the first man on the bench here, 150.7k. Took one of the first contested grabs of the game for the Tigs in their match sim and looked pretty good. And yeah, even though he may be playing a lockdown role more so, I think, just at that price point, you can't go wrong. He's best 22. That's really all that matters. And he might be a slow burn, but who cares? He's a bit of a cash cow. And yeah, even though he's got that early buy, I think he's going to make us cash. And, we're kind of strapped for, really good rookies, especially those with job security in defense. So he passes the eye test for me. Now, I did consider this man here, Dan Curtin, but again, at that higher price point, I'm not so much a fan. I have no doubt that he's going to be best 22 for the Crows. I just don't know how he's going to score. In the match sim, he didn't perform the best. Even in the intra-club, I think he was playing, albeit on Tex Walker, and got absolutely smashed, but no surprise there. It really comes down to the role, I think, with Curtin, and that probably comes down to, he's not a genuine lockdown defender. I think probably like a third tall in defence, potentially, so they can drift off his man, all that sort of stuff. He might be a handy point scorer, but at that higher price point, I think I might bypass him, just because, again, the higher price point a cash cow is, the more they need to average in order to make up the same price as, say, someone that's a bottom priced rookie, which is a nice segue for the bottom priced rookie that I have in my team. And it is this man here, Ethan Phillips. SSP signing from the VFL, was the best and fairest VFL winner, and continues that run of players that have done so in the past that have then been drafted to AFL. So I did see him obviously in this game against the Dogs and looked pretty good. He came on late, albeit, but took a nice grab among his first possessions, and got the big frame, big body, and I think he's going to be very, very valuable for the Hawks. As we all know, they've struggled with injuries in defence, especially to their key lockdown defenders. Again, he might be a bit of a slow burn, but at the very least, I think he's going to be making his cash, especially being that bottom price as well. Obviously means he doesn't have to average as much as Gipkus to, you know, make as much as Gipkus. So yeah, if that makes sense. Outside of that, I did have this man here, Zach Reed. He was in my team up until today, and he was the sacrificial lamb to fit in this other guy that I spoke about earlier, who I've got a bit of a love-hate relationship with, who comes into my team. So Zach Reed, again, a lot of these guys like that are, you know, even Toby Pink, they're all lockdown defenders really, and they're not really going to score us or really make us too much cash. And from week to week, their scoring is going to fluctuate, and you're not going to really be expecting any, you know, high ceiling scores from them as such. So he's still on the radar, but I wasn't really overly impressed with his game against the Saints. Again, you know, he was kind of, you know, I think he played on King and got slammed, but then he went off and had a bit of a rest as well. So you can't really read too much into his game. But yeah, I just think just in terms of cash cows that we have at our disposal, he probably ranks down the list. And what this does do here, as you can see, in terms of my structure, I'll finish off the chat on defenders here. Traditionally, I have gone into the season with at least a minimum 2 primos, maybe a mid-pricer, maybe 2 mid-pricers, and then 2 rookies. Or I've gone for, you know, 2 primos, mid-pricer, and 3 rookies. Very rarely have I gone 3 primos, but I don't think I've ever gone into a season with 4 primos in defense, of course, counting Hayden Young, who I have no doubt will finish as a top 6 to 8 defender. So this really does give me a fair bit of confidence and security as well, because in previous seasons, as I said, especially starting with mid-prices and stuff that come with a bit of risk, I've sort of used the defense is in terms of like priority of upgrading. I don't think I've really prioritized the defense in the past either. So this is uncharted territory for me. So I'm not really going to have to prioritize upgrading the defense really, because I think a 4 primo line, especially whether it be, you know, defenders or forwards, considering that we've got, you know, 6 spots, with 4 of those 6 spots being primos, you can just sit back and just allow the likes of Caulfield, hopefully Williams or a Gipkus, Phillips, if you go for Reed potentially, or a Toby Pink, you can just sit back and just wait for these guys to make as much bank as you can. And hopefully the likes of, you know, like Caulfield and Williams, who have a bit of nice scoring history behind them, which is part of the reason why I've got them in my team first and foremost, but also on field. Hopefully they can just make you bulk cash and you don't have to worry until the latter part of the season. That's kind of my thinking behind that, and part of the reason why I kind of flipped in terms of bringing this other guy into my midfield, who I will probably segue into now. So let's have a chat about the midfield. So the man that I have in my team first up, and it was someone that I was fading initially in my first team reveal video, if you saw it, and it is Marcus Bontempelli. So I was thinking about it a little bit harder when I was chatting about the midfielder episodes in Midfielder Week with Liam. He kind of talked me around as well, and just about the fact that yes, he might not be able to average, you know, the 129.7 that he was averaging in 2023, but I think at the very least, Bontempelli provides that uber primo option and uber captain option from week to week, which is just super valuable. And no doubt he's going to drop in price at some point. But again, if he was to drop in price, you just don't know when that's going to happen. That's the big unknown when it comes to these uber primos. Yes, you may be able to hold out for them, but say for example, you know, he starts like shit in the first, you know, 2-3 rounds of the season, drops down to 650, 600k. Where are you going to find the money to upgrade to Bontempelli if by that stage you don't have the cash cows that have made him enough cash to trade in for you to then fund that upgrade to Bontempelli? So, you know, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot there. And again, you're relying on luck. A lot of the game with SuperCoach, you kind of have to take a lot of the luck out of it. Yes, there's a lot of luck involved in the game, we know that, but as long as you work it to your advantage in some respect, at least, you know, you're a bit of ahead of the curve. That's kind of my thinking behind starting with Bont, and happy enough with it, even though the fact that it does tie up that amount of cash, it is what it is. And I don't think, you know, other guys around his price could really elevate to that level as such yet. Second up, we have this man, Zach Butters, and I don't know if I had him on my team initially. I don't think I did. We'll have to have a look at the end of the episode. But yeah, he's someone that is valuable just for the fact that he doesn't have the early buy and he doesn't have an unfavorable buy. He actually has the one, his Port Adelaide's bye week is aligned with Frio's. So those are the only 2 teams with the buy on that week. So it does mean that Butters is super valuable for all the other weeks we are struggling to field a best 18. Yeah, that's part of the reason for it, and I just think Butters is a gun, could potentially go to another level. Arguably 2023 was his breakout season, I think. Full season of fitness, all that sort of stuff, full time in the midfield. So, what's there to say that he couldn't potentially raise his average another 5 points to 118 or 119 thereabouts? So he's someone that I'm keen to take a gamble on, especially considering that he is among the higher owned, higher priced primos in the midfield line. So that's kind of my thinking behind that. Next up, in the third spot, we have someone that I think is sort of the next gen that will take another step in their game. I have to scroll down a bit, surprisingly. It's LDU, 635, 100. Liam and I spoke about him in our midfielder primo episode, and we're both big fans of him. If he wasn't injured, he had multiple injuries through the season, and he was very unfortunate. But as we saw in the back part of the year, when he really regained fitness, played full minutes, and he was through the middle, obviously getting bulk CBAs, he was punching out similar scores to a Tom Green, who we spoke about alongside LDU this time last year as potential breakout candidates. And I think if LDU had a season fully fit and no injury setbacks, I have no doubt that he would have taken that next step like Tom Green did. So I think LDU is that player to take the next step this season, around about that price point. And he's going to be a joy to watch. I have considered, and I did have previously in my team, this man here, Tom Green, who I just spoke of, who surprisingly is actually cheaper than LDU. Obviously got injured with a hammy late in the season in 2023. But again, got the early buy. And I was thinking of using him potentially, in my team to then maybe trade him out to this next guy who I've just brought into my team outright and thought, you know what, I'm going to bite the bullet because I've seen enough in the match sim. Looked really good. And it is, once I scroll down and see how far down I go, yep, 11%, Nick Martin. So my original plan was to potentially start with Tom Green, allow Tom Green to play his first 2 games, or 3 games rather, go up in price, and then when he's going into his bye in the 4th, round of the season, including the opening round, I would then trade him to Nick Martin. Obviously Nick Martin wouldn't have played the 3 games by then, so he would have been at the same price point, allowed Tom Green to go up in price. Again, I still may go down that route, but I think I'm pretty keen to start Nick Martin just to save that trade. And Tom Green, even though I am bullish on him, obviously 2 of his first 3 games of the season are against North Melbourne and West Coast. Paltry opposition, but didn't perform the best against both of them. I think especially against West Coast, he had a bit of a downer. But the only reason I'll be doing it is to potentially make a bit of cash. But yeah, again, that early buy isn't as favourable. And probably weighing up, using a trade as opposed to, starting with Tom Green and then him coming out of the blocks and potentially scoring well. What do you equate one trade's value as in terms of points? 50 points, 100 points. And I just think at that price point as well, it's super value. It gives me an extra 130 odd K up my sleeve to really distribute elsewhere by going for the cheaper Nick Martin over Tom Green. So let's move on to keep things moving. Go to the next player in what's this, M5. I should be mentioning this as well for those people tuning into the audio podcast. But again, probably should say from the outset, if you're listening to us on the audio podcast, jump across to YouTube because visually it's much easier to follow along with. But in M5, we have someone that might be a little bit of a surprise, hasn't featured yet in the match sims. Geez, how far down do I have to go? Hold up, wait a minute. Whoa, it's Carl Amon. And I'm saying whoa because his ownership is now 1%. I think when I did this video with my team reveal going back 3 weeks ago, his ownership was getting right up there and it's dropped back to 1%. Obviously didn't feature it in the match sim, which I think is a bit of a blessing in disguise potentially. He should play in the official preseason game this week for Hawthorn. And I do think that, we saw that Massimo D'Ambrosio played well, had 26 disposals or thereabouts. I truly think that he was warming the seat for Amon, and that is the role that Amon's going to have going into 2024. And it's the same role that he finished the season with virtually, Amon, and scored well, was averaging 100 or thereabouts, if not more, from memory. So I think if he goes back into that role, all I need to see is him play that role in this preseason game for the Hawks this week, and he's a lock and load. If he doesn't, he's going to make way in my side, I think, and I would be prepared to potentially spend a trade on him, and maybe even go down that route, that tactic of starting Tom Green and then trading to Karl Amon after seeing, a couple of weeks of scoring from Amon. But he is at the moment in my M5 position. Now, this is going to make some people laugh. We're up to M6, and it's a guy that, as I spoke from the top, someone that Liam and I always take the piss out of. I started with him last year against my better judgment. He lasted literally one round up against St Kilda, got injured. Then a lot of people were trading him in the latter part of the season. And Liam was saying, we're screaming from the high hills, do not get this guy into your team. Fast forward to this preseason, and we've mentioned numerous times, this guy is a trap. This guy's going to get injured. He's going to get managed. He's not going to get ample mid-time, but I think I've buckled. It's like, it's like an old flame that, has burnt you so many times, and you've just said to yourself, you're not going to do it again. You're not going to get your heart broken again because it's been broken so many times, but it's happening. And it's this man here, Nat Fife, or Nat Knife, really, because he strikes into my heart every single time I start him. And I have no doubt that he's going to get injured at some stage. But trying to, rationalise it, Liam and I were both on the same page now. Last time we spoke about, or we haven't actually spoken about Nat Fife in full detail, but his ownership was sort of in the teens, if that. His ownership now has skyrocketed to 46%. Off the back of his match sim performance, which, granted, I don't know if many of you tuning in watched the game, but I wasn't overly impressed. He got caught numerous times. He got caught holding the ball from memory twice. He has lost all speed out of the stoppage. Although the one thing that did impress me was his handballing skills. So I think in terms of, getting clearance work and stuff, he hasn't lost that game, but bursting out of stoppages, bursting out of packs, that is done. Those days are done for Fife. And I think just weighing things up alongside, going from an outright risk to then going into, calculated risk territory, which is where Fife is at the moment, I think, with 46%. Almost half the competition own him. If he does falter, let's rationalise it. We've got 40 trades. Sure, it's not ideal to waste a trade on someone who has been historically, injured more often than he is fit in recent times. But we've got extra trades. Aside from that, in the early rounds, we have best 18. So if Nat Fife, and this is the big clincher for me as to why he has made his way into my team. If he gets injured in the early rounds where we're best 18, his score will drop out of your side more often than not. So that is a little bit of a safety net, first and foremost with the ownership. Being so high, it sort of mitigates any risk because you're in the same boat as half the competition. And then beneath that, the second safety net is there's best 18 across the early rounds. Again, I'm not a massive fan of starting Nat Fife, but I think weighing it up alongside, what he could produce, even though, yes, I do think he will be managed in-game. He might be pushed up forward at various stages. But I think, considering that he is being rotated through the middle, even if he doesn't get bulk opportunity through the middle, I think what he can provide is, something that can eclipse his finishing average of 50.7 that he's priced at. I can see him averaging around about 70 potentially, and he will be able to make us some bank at the very least. He's obviously not a keeper, but I think he's weaseled his way into my side and into my heart when I've blocked him out time and time again. He's been in my burn book so many times. I've crossed out his name in not just not pencil, not pen, not permanent marker. I've even gone to the stage of burning the burn book just to make sure that Nat Fife doesn't feature anywhere in my consciousness. We avoided talking about him during the preseason, Liam and I, but he's in our sides. So, in my side anyway. Maybe Liam's, maybe. We'll have to wait and see when he does his team reveal episode. But I think all of those reasons, I think, against my better judgment, I think he can provide some sort of a score and some sort of an average to make us a little bit of cash. The cash that he could make us compared to another cash cow, I think will be similar, but the scores that he can provide, I think, will be a bit more than what a genuine cash cow rookie will be able to provide us. And then being the mid forward as well does provide a little bit of flexibility as well. Gee whiz. I don't know what it is with Nat Fyfe, but we've got a love-hate relationship, and he always makes his way into my team. And I can't blame Bevo this time. Last year, he made his way into my team off the back of McLean not being selected in round 1 by Bevo, and I had extra cash and an extra spot to bring Fyfe in. This time, I can only blame myself again. And no doubt he's going to get injured, and he's going to break all of our hearts. And I'm going to say, I told you so. I'm going to tell myself, I'm going to look in the mirror and say, I told you so. But anyway, we'll wait and see.
You're going to help us,
Mr. Jackman,
whether you want to or not.
Aside from that, so what are we up to? M6. So now we're going into sort of, mid-price and cash cow territory. And probably no surprise as to who these next guys are. Colby McKercher, and we'll just bite the bullet, and Riley Sanders to round out our midfield on field. So McKercher, I heard a lot about him, obviously. I spoke about him in the North Melbourne Collingwood match simulation. Absolute gun, rebounding off halfback. He's literally Sheasel 2.0. He's got the ability to read the play, be in positions that best suit his team to really follow up and get, chain possessions, all that sort of stuff. Just incredible. Clean foot skills, clean handball work. Incredible. Just get him in team, 100%. He should be in, way more sides. Way more sides. So those 34% of teams that don't have him, you're going to be wasting a trade to bring him in. So don't try and be cute. Likewise with this guy here, Riley Sanders, had 25 disposals or thereabouts, and actually had Finn McGuinness moved onto him at one stage in the match sim against the Hawks, which is a massive compliment to the impact that Riley Sanders was having. You might have seen, if you haven't seen it, go and check it out on Twitter. Western Bulldogs, they clipped up that highlight of Sanders bursting through a stoppage, getting a handball receive, and kicking a beautiful goal from just outside 50. An incredible player. And I think the Bulldogs and Bulldogs fans will be looking back thinking, we missed the finals in 2023, but we were able to pick up this absolute gun who's going to be a gun of the future. And I'm a massive fan. So again, should be in 100% of teams. Let's have a look at our bench now. And there's probably two guys here that are verging on locks. There's another guy that, I'm kind of 75-25 on. So we'll start with him first. Darcy Wilson, he's in 45% of teams at the moment. He's a mid forward. Looked all right, not too bad in the match sim against the Dons. But I'm just weary about him. He's a genuine winger, really. Is he going to be pushed forward at various stages? Is that going to put a cap on his scoring ceiling and scoring average from week to week? We'll have to wait and see, but he's thereabouts at the moment, probably that 75-25 player that I spoke of. Outside of him, even though we didn't see him in the match sim because he was out due to illness, Jeremy Sharp is in 50% of teams, mature age player, will get a role and get a go for Freo, especially with Chapman being injured, who is kind of his direct competition. He is almost a lock and load at this stage. And then rounding out the bench is Jai Clark. Watched him against my mob and Carlton and looked pretty good various stages. There's a couple of errors that he made, but just needs to adjust to senior level, and that will come with time. But I am bullish on him, and I think he will be best 23 week after week for the Cats, as they need to sort of blood their next generation, having lost a fair bit of talent in Selwood, and obviously Dangerfield. This could be potentially his last year or so. So let's move on to the rucks now. And again, this hasn't changed at all on field, so no surprise here. And it is obviously Brodie Grundy and Max Gawn. Again, don't be cute. Spoke enough about these guys as to how much they're undervalued and how, they can jump their average up by at least 15 to 20, I reckon anyway, average points rucking solo, both of these guys. You know, they were kind of each other's worst enemy, playing in the same side at Melbourne. But we saw enough of a sample size last year for both of them when Gawn was injured and Grundy was scoring well as a solo ruck, and likewise when Grundy was dropped and Gawn was rucking solo. Even dating back to when Gawn, you know, had Luke Jackson as sort of his backup ruck at various stages. It brought down his average compared to seasons prior to that, where he was the solo ruck, where he was averaging 120 plus. So again, don't be cute, don't be silly, and start with these two guys. Outside of that, on the bench, I did have Jordan Sweet, but it looks as though Ivan Solo is back to full fitness. I think he had a finger injury from memory, and I think he will be the outright ruck. And at a cheaper option here, Sam Naismith, 123.9, really impressed me in his game up against the Ds, especially going up against Max Gawn. He's got the real big frame, senior body, all that sort of stuff. Hopefully he can stay fit and keep his knees structurally sound. Knock on wood, of course. But yeah, Naismith, you mightn't have seen it, but Nankervis is still battling from his plantar fascia injury, which by all reports is an injury that can linger for some time, and players do require surgery on because it just doesn't fix itself. So he's in a bit of a race against the clock to be fit for the round 0 game up against the Suns. And I think off the back of that alone, I think Nank, even if he is fit for round 0, I think he's gonna break down at some point in the season, considering that he really has had a limited preseason off the back of, you know, having to nurse this injury. So we'll lock in Naismith as my R3 going into the season at this stage. Let's move on to the forwards now, and yeah, no surprise here. Sam Flanders hasn't moved out of my team. I think he's the one genuine option here as a lock and load. Really impressed me, I think, in the game against Brisbane. Yes, he may play patches pushing forward as sort of a, you know, mid come forward at various stages for relief, but I think I saw enough in that game for him to really solidify his spot in my team, and I think he's going to be the breakout contender. We saw that last year in the back part when he was finally given CBAs at mid-minutes, and I think that's going to continue into 2024. So he is a lock and load. Moving on to F2, and we're going for a bit of value here. Obviously, Jack Macrae is injured. By reports, he's on the cusp of returning to the team, but that did put a dent in his preseason preparation, obviously. So even though he's still in 25% of teams, Jack Macrae, I don't think I can run the risk, and I think we could potentially get him at a cheaper price point, and I think they will kind of manage his minutes at the start of the season as well, which may lend itself to a lower ceiling score from week to week, and it may mean that his price may drop even further than the 558.4 starting price. So for F2 for me, I have gone for someone that is a bit cheaper at 258.3 in the form of James Harms, who was kind of, you could say, the beneficiary of Jack Macrae being out. No doubt about that. So by all means, he's not a lock and load in my team, James Harms, because I want to see how he performs, how many CBAs he gets when Jack Macrae is in the side. So hopefully that Macrae can play this preseason game. If not, we might have to just bite the bullet and take the gamble. But I think James Harms, with what he can produce, and a big part of his game that I really enjoy that does provide a bit of a solid scoring floor from week to week, is his tackling numbers. Is an absolute gun, and it does mean that if he does get time through the middle, those tackling numbers are going to provide a bit of a, you know, a stable scoring floor from week to week. So big fan of that. At this stage, he is in my team. Of course, Bontempelli and Treloar also weren't in the match sim team either against the Hawks. So there was quite a few players out. So you can't really, as having said all that, can't read too much into the match sim performance itself. So we'll wait and see how he performs in the preseason game that the Doggies play officially this week. Moving on to F3, and we have a guy here, another value selection in Jack Billings in 19% of teams at the moment, 243.9, but he actually impressed me more than Harms. So I think I'm more keen on starting with Billings. He played sort of that, you know, high half forward, I guess, even at various stages, pushing even down further towards defense and rebounding the ball and slingshotting it back. But I think, you know, there was no doubting he was a high half forward role, which is what he's being groomed for. His kicking is a feature, and he was hitting up targets inside 50 in Melbourne's game up against the Tigs. So I'm a massive fan of him. I think he had 20-odd disposals thereabouts, around about that mark, and did look really good. Passed the eye test, so he is in my team at the moment. Moving on to F4, gathering a bit of steam here, and it is the most owned player, I think arguably in the game, but especially up forward. 71% of teams own him, and it is Harley Reid. I think a lot of people are just jumping at shadows here with Reid's, off the back of Reid's match sim performance against Freo. Didn't really get much of a chance, I think, to show his wares. Played sparingly through the middle, bit off defense, but I think, you know, obviously a watch and see as to how he performs in the official preseason game for West Coast. But I am relatively bullish on him, and we'll wait and see. I am prepared, though, to potentially, if he doesn't pass the eye test in this game, just because he's at the higher price point and there are so many cash cow / rookies available in the forward line, I think, you know, you probably can run the risk of not going for Reid in your team. So having said that, he's a big watch, 100%. So it's a kind of a make or break with this official preseason game for West Coast to see how he plays. Then we have at F5, and he's in 40% of teams, and rightfully so, I think. It's Finn McRae. Blew me away in the intra-club first and foremost. Clearance after clearance, getting bulk CBAs, even kicking goals. Didn't impress me as much in their match sim up against North Melbourne. Did get the first clearance of the game and kicked a nice goal as well, but wasn't as dominant. But I do think that he will be a starter in round one. And with Taylor Adams being out of the team now for the Pies, having crossed to the Swans, I think Finn McRae, it's the red carpet's there. It's been rolled out for him to really perform, and I think he's done enough groundwork across the, you know, the intra club and the match sim and training bowl reports for him to, you know, have made his way into the engine room for the Pies. So I do think he will be able to score well, albeit I think he will fluctuate from week to week, but will be able to make us some bulk cash. So I am bullish on him. Rounding out the on-field forward spots in F6, we do have the second highest owned forward with 52% in the form of Sean Manor. Obviously recruited from Werribee, the 6-goal, you know, I was going to say hero, but they didn't win the grand final in the VFL. But 6-goal performance, superstar, mature age rookie for the Cats. He is someone that everyone's got in their team. Most people, 52% of people have him in their team. But his stocks have lowered, I think, in recent times, much like Harley Reid, but more so considering they only played really one quarter. It was probably a quarter and a half from memory, I think, against Carlton in that match sim. And he did a couple of nice things, took a couple of nice marks, and went for a shot at goal, did miss, and I think he did hit someone up. Might have been Hawkins or someone, maybe, I can't recall, and did have a bit of a goal assist there, or a scoring assist. So I think there is opportunity there for him, but I'm just worried about him potentially being a bit of a starting sub, maybe. So he's a bit of a danger in that respect there. And yeah, we just don't know if he's going to be best 18 or best 23. I think he will play, but I just don't know if he's going to be starting sub, or even, more worryingly, going to be subbed off in game until he kind of adjusts to senior level and the pace of the game. I don't think there's going to be much worry there, considering he is a mature age body. But as we know, the pace of VFL compared to the pace of senior level AFL, it does differ quite starkly. So there's a little bit of a worry there. And if that is the case, I am happy to punt him for another rookie, which, as I spoke of before, we are flushed with options here in the forward line with rookies and cash cows. Which is a bit of a segue to the rookies that I have on my bench in the forward line. And first up, and again, this is kind of, these guys aren't set and forget, because, as I said, there's so many options, and we have to see these preseason games, these official preseason games, and the form of players in order to sort of, you know, get a bit of a better idea as to who to select and who to fade. But I do have in my team at the moment, and it is someone that impressed me, highly rated junior, high draft pick, Caleb Windsor for the Ds. He's at that high price point, 180.3k, but he impressed me because he was playing almost like through the middle on the wing, and then played sort of the back part of the match sim against Richmond, you know, out of defense. And I guess it does show that as well, that they, you know, it's quite notable that it's been reported the Ds really rate his foot skills And having seen that, and he was kind of almost the distributor at various stages coming out of defense, which, like a McKercher, like a Sheasel that we've seen, if he was to get that role, lo and behold, that would make him a almost must-have. Scored quite well in terms of, fantasy points and possessions and all that sort of stuff, and passed the eye test for me, so he's on my bench at the moment. And let's round out my team with the last spot, which is the last bench spot in my forward line, and it's chopped and changed, but this guy here has really impressed me. Sam Darcy. Say that again. Luke Darcy, of course, his son, the father-son prospect. He's going into his, third season now. He's battled with a bit of injury. He's battled with a bit of inconsistency. The Dogs have used him up forward in defence, in the ruck at various stages, and I think he does need that stability. And he blew me away in the game, the match sim against the Hawks. Was the number 1 ruck. English didn't play, but obviously won't be the number 1 ruck going into the season proper. But I can see him playing up forward, which in this match sim, he ended up kicking 3 goals and looked really good. His marking is a really, really big feature and a big strength that I am a massive fan of. So I can see him being in the best 23 from week to week for the Dogs. It's that time, and he fits that profile, age profile, years in the game profile for him to take the next step. And I can see him at least making us some nice points, albeit as a key forward, come relief ruckman. He mightn't have that sort of consistency to his game, but I think he is someone to consider starting on your bench. But by all means, he isn't a lock and load. Alrighty, so that is my team, and I'll probably roll through some other names that I am considering, and it is a long list. So it is going to be a painstaking task trying to narrow down as to who gets the last spots in my team. But it does come down to roll and whatnot. As we know, Luke Parker, he went down with a broken arm, has been ruled out for quite a few weeks. And it does open up an opportunity there for someone like a James Jordan, who I was keen on. I think I had him in my initial team reveal video. He is on the radar. Likewise, so Jordan is in 24% of teams at the moment. And being a dual position player as a mid forward as well obviously helps. But the other one that I am keen on is, I'll just type his name in because I don't know what his ownership is. He's in 1% of teams, Angus Sheldrick. Albeit he is at a higher price point, but as we know and as we saw from last year, his points per minute is off the charts. So if he's able to get some CBAs and even more CBAs than he did last year without Parker being there, and I think Parker had the most CBAs for the Swans last season. There's so many CBAs to go around. So, do they rotate it equally through a Sheldrick or an Adams or a Jordan, all that sort of stuff. So at least we've got round 0, the opening round, to really use as an eye test to work out, okay, which of these guys are getting those carryover CBAs that are left over from Parker not being in the team, and who, even more so, is performing well enough to justify selecting in your starting team. So both Jordan and Sheldrick are on my radar at the moment. Adams to a little bit of an extent, but not so much because he's at the higher price point. The other player is Roberts, the other Swan. I don't think he's going to be playing through the middle. I think he was playing off half-back predominantly for the Swans in their match sim against the Giants. Did look pretty good as well. So again, I might go for Matt Roberts instead of a Darcy Wilson, for example, or I don't know who else I'd be able to drop, but I'd need to make some swings, I think. But again, Roberts, he's on my radar. Outside of that, we have in the forward line, McGuinness, someone that I was a really, really big fan of. He's in 4% of teams at the moment. Reef McGuinness from the Pies, 123.9. He's a forward only, but again, he has shown that he could be potentially a best 22 player, best 23 player for the Pies without McStay being there. There's an opening in the forward line for the Pies, so does he get it? Who knows? The other guy is Sexton. He's in 25% of teams at the moment, playing in his new role off half-back, and albeit we do need to see the Suns having a full team. So he's not on my team at the moment, but he's probably one guy that I'm the most bullish on outside of maybe Jordan, just with this new role. If he's able to perform to that level that he did, in the match sim, I would be keen on starting him in my team because he does look like being, I guess, the higher scorer of all the cash cows around about this price point. Outside of Sexton, we have Aaron Cadman, 15% of teams, 127.6k, but albeit I think his scoring will be up and down as a key forward, much like Sam Darcy, I imagine. So, yep, he's on the radar too. The other guy in the midfield is Jacob Ware, or Ware, as we called him in 2023, 123.9. I don't know if he's going to be best 23. That's the only thing. Got subbed from memory a few times in 2023. Could that happen again? You know, it's a bit of a risk there, but he's on the radar. Outside of that, we've got Henry Huswaite from the Hawks, higher price point, 184.4. I'd like to see him in a team that's best 23 for the Hawks. So we'll wait and see how he performs off the back of that. Mackenzie's another one for the Hawks. He got bulk CBAs, looked really good, like Huswaite, albeit higher price point, 271.5k. So I would need to average more than all these other cash cows I'm talking about in order to make the equivalent price rise. Outside of that, we have Lazaro, mid forward for the Roos, 181.1. He played very, very well in the intra-club and then kind of fell away a little bit in the match sim against the Pies. But again, another player that you can potentially fit into your team. It does help with him. At least he's a mid-forward. So he provides himself as an option. You're not sort of having to choose between, Lazaro, Sexton, McGuinness, all these guys in the forward line who are forwards only, because Lazaro is a mid-forward. Rounding things out with Steely Green, who again performed well against the D's in the match sim. Kicked 3 snags from memory, and I think he will be best 23. There is an opportunity there for him. So those are kind of the rookies or high-priced rookies that I am thinking of. In terms of those players that have fallen primos, they are still on the radar firmly. And it is Jack Steele, 529.5. Blew it out of the water, blew the cobwebs well and truly off in the Saints match sim against the Dons. He's on my radar. Took Miller, I think I had him in my team in my initial team reveal video. 545.5k, absolute bargain. Looks as though he's going to get his CBAs back, so I'm a massive fan of him. So he would almost have to take the place of, say, an Amon or even a Nick Martin if I was to go down that route. So again, he's a big watch in the official preseason game for the Suns. And rounding us out is Zach Fisher, 378.6k for the Roos. He's only a forward. He's a forward only. So again, he's not as favourable considering that, and being that higher price point as well. I don't know. He's more expensive than a Billings, more expensive than a Harms, who I think can kind of average similar to Fisher, if not more. So he's down the pecking order for me, is Zachy Fisher. And aside from the fact that the Roos already have McKerch, they've got Sheasel in those roles, rebounding off defense. Do they really need 3 players? Can they afford to carry 3 players in that same role? I don't think they can, and they'll need to play accountable. Obviously, it depends on opposition matchups and all that sort of stuff, but I do think that he will be made accountable and play more of a lockdown, staying close to his opposition forward in order to keep a spot in the Roos team. So down the pecking order for me, but that's pretty much it for my team. As I said, we'll go back over to my team and how it looked initially in my initial team release video. So we have, in terms of players that I have across both of these teams, both of these iterations, Thomas Stewart, Cecil is out of my team, Hayden Young is still in my team, likewise Williams, Marty Hawes out of the team, I don't think he's best 23, Nick Caulfield is in my team, Gipkiss likewise, and Reed is out of my team, albeit just today only. Rory Laird is out of my team, Bond comes in his spot, LDU is in my team, Tom Green is out, Took Miller's out, Amon is still in my team at the moment, James Jordan's out, but could be potentially in off the back of how he performs in round 0. McKerch is in my team. Sanders is still in my team. Likewise, Clark, Sharp, Wilson. Gorn and Grundy, they're still in my team, obviously. Jordan Sweet goes out for Naismith on the bench in the ruck. And then for the forwards, McRae goes out. Flanders is still in my team. Tom Lynch is out. He won't be playing the first 2 games, and I don't think he's going to be that big of a cash cow anyway, at that higher price point, which is similar to Billings anyway. Jack Billings, having spoken of him, he is still in my team. Likewise, Harley Reid and Sean Manor. And Finn McRae, he's still in my team, and Cadman goes out for, I think it was Darcy, wasn't it? Yes, Darcy. And then other changes, Windsor, he's into my team. Fife comes in. Nick Martin comes into my team. Zach Butters comes into my team as well. And the SSP mature age signing, Ethan Phillips for the Hawks in defence, comes into my team. And James Harms as well, up forward. That's pretty much it. Liam and I will be reconvening at the back part of this week and punching out that frequently asked questions, or FAQ or FAP, the FAP, as we're calling it, the frequently asked players episode, and chatting about some of those players that we did miss in our line-by-line breakdown, and then obviously doing a bit of a preseason match, all-encompassing episode. So yeah, we're going to be doing a full official preseason game wrap episode, so look out for that as well. And Liam, I think, provided that he does have time, will be putting together his team reveal episode as well. But outside of that, ladies and gents, can't thank you enough for all your support. We've smashed, milestones galore. Our Facebook page has eclipsed 4,000 follows / likes. Our Twitter page is actually gone bananas. We're now well over 3,000 followers, which is just incredible. And then in terms of the uptake via our audio podcast, we're just, again, hitting new heights that we haven't done in previous seasons, and our YouTube videos are being watched more than ever as well. So again, we can't thank you enough for all your support across the preseason. And having said all that, if you are new to our channel and you have tuned in and you've liked what you've seen, and I guess the advice that we've given, whether it be this episode or other episodes, if you tuned into other episodes as well, if you have liked what you've seen, give us a follow. That would be absolutely awesome. Give us a sub, all that sort of stuff. We do really, I guess, gauge how we're performing off, obviously views that we get, listens that we get via audio podcast, but also the number of subs that we get on YouTube as well, in terms of, getting a well-rounded idea of, the uptake on our content that we are producing. So again, we can't thank you enough. Give us a like, give us a sub, and rounding things out, if you have any questions, comments, all that sort of stuff, feel free to put them down below if you're watching us on YouTube. And if you're tuning in via audio podcast, feel free to slide into our DMs or hit us up just generally on Twitter, and we'll be able to help you and have a bit of a yarn. Outside of that, join our Discord as well. Links in the comments. Likewise, our Open League as well, which we will be giving a SuperCoach Edge Championship ring to award the highest scoring or highest ranked participant in our Open League come at the end of the season. So with that said, we'll catch you in the next one. Thanks again for tuning in. Cheers.